we already have 5 levels completed, and we're now going to work on creating level 6. However, there are some resources in this session. So we have some artwork, we have the boss left and right, and we're going to work on these first. We're going to get these set up, and then we also have boss fireball, push block, trigger block, and the trigger. Let's work on this one first. Let's get the boss left to come in. We're going to go to actor types, and we're going to create a new actor, and we're just simply going to call this boss. Click here, and then click to add a frame. Now we're going to choose the image, and it's in the resources for this session, and we want the level 6 art and the boss left. Now we have to split this up, so there's 2 columns and 3 rows. And this will obviously split the animation up, which you can see there. And if you wanted to slow the animation down, you could do if you wanted by changing the time in milliseconds. I'm just actually going to duplicate those ones. I'm going to copy those frames and paste it into the end, simply so that I've got a nice continuity of motion there. Great. So now the eyes don't they move smoothly. They don't judder. I'm going to change the name of this one to boss control left, and I do want it looping. I'm going to go to the collision, and at the moment the collision's square, which is not a very good collision shape for this object. So delete that and add a circle. Now drag that into the center, and I'm actually going to change the radius a bit. So about 32, let's try that. Not allowing me to drag it around like that because it's too big at the moment, so I'm just going to lower this down to about 25. I'm going to move it across on the X to 0, and I'm going to move it up on the Y. Okay, it's looking a little bit closer. I'm going to try and get it into the center, and then from here I can start to. Okay, it doesn't like it when it's outside of the box. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. That's around the character. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I want some of these flames on the corners here to also have some colliders. So we can actually add more than one collider shape to an object, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a polygon. Now polygon comes up with its own editor. We can zoom in just the same, and all of these polygons have 3 points at the moment. And you can click and drag any of them around. You can also set them by numbers there. I'm going to try and shape it so that the polygon fits this sort of a fire tendril shape on the top of the head there. Click OK, and you see how that's added to the object now. Now it appears that it's a little bit off when I look at it here. So if I want to go back and continue editing, I have to select the shape, and then you can see I can edit polygon. Now I'm going to zoom back in, and I'm just going to try and move it slightly so that it matches up with the other animation there. Okay, now I need to add one on the right. And even though during the animation the fire animation will change, so it won't always match up perfectly. We don't actually see the collisions. That's the thing. It's only for how the characters interact with other objects. So it only really needs to be an approximation, and I think that's good enough. Now when the character jumps on the top of the fire boss, obviously it's a circular collider, so it should be slightly more realistic in the way that he jumps on the character. Now for the physics, we want to ensure it cannot be pushed and can rotate is set to no. And that's the first animation created. Now your job is to bring in the boss right animation And the fire boss left and the fire boss right, set them up in the same way and also give them collisions. For the fire boss left and right, probably just a circle collider will do. Okay, so you just bring in a new animation just like this and you rename it Boss Patrol Right. So let's just open that. And there should now be 4 animations: Boss Fire Left, Boss Fire Right, Boss Patrol Left and Boss Patrol Right. And Boss Patrol Left is the default animation. Just ensure that they all have the correct names set up for them. Collisions, so for the boss fire left and right, it's just a simple circle collider. And these are the coordinates. And then for the boss patrols left and right, these are the ones that also have the almost like horns, the spikes on the side. I'm a little bit more accurate. In this assignment, you're going to bring in the rest of these graphics. So you're going to bring in, you've already brought in the boss, so we don't have to worry about that. You're going to bring in the boss fireball, the push block, trigger block, and trigger. Okay, and the trigger should actually be 2 animations, on and off. One of the animations should be it blinking on and off. You're also going to lay out level 6. So first of all, go in the scenes and let's just create level 6. And this should have a width of 120 tiles and make the background black. And so you're going to lay this one out. You can use the grid to help you to do that. You're going to lay this out according to this image, which is in your resources. This one should be moving to begin with. And we're going to put the push block there. That's the trigger. That's where that's going to go, the trigger sensor type thing. These blocks are going to go in. They're going to be still to begin with. Then we have a weak wall, and then we're going to put our boss in this final part. So let's double click on the boss fireball to take a look. Now we have 2 animations, explode and fireball. Explode has 3 frames. And fireball has 3 frames. The final one is 600 milliseconds. It's not looping, it's called fireball. This one is 200, 150 and 100 milliseconds. Not looping, it's called explode. Collision for both is a circle collider set to radius of 16. The physics, it cannot be pushed and can rotate set to no. So now let's take a look at the trigger. So let's double click to open that. We have 2 animations, sensor and still, and the sensor is animated, 200 milliseconds each frame. And it's called sensor, and it is looping because we want it to continuously play. Still is just a single frame, not looping, it's called still. And the sensor is the default animation, we want it to be continuously flashing in the game. For the collision, there is no collider on this object. For the physics, it cannot move because we don't need any physics. Let's double click on the trigger block now. So trigger block is a single frame, not looping. Collision, simple square collider. Physics cannot be pushed. Can rotate is set to no. And we also have a push block as well. So again, a single frame, not looping. Collision, simple box collider. For this one, the physics is normal and can rotate is set to no because we want to be able to push this block. And that's how we do it. We simply set it to normal to allow us to push it. Let's have a look at the level 6 scene, which you should have laid out now. Should be organized into layers, which you're quite used to by now. We also have a GUI set up, but we don't have any key on this level. As you can see on level 5 we have a key. There is no key to collect on the final level because you have to kill the boss to actually progress to the win screen. These should all be anchored to the screen. As you can see, there's the key is on level 5, it shouldn't be on level 6. There's the push block and there's the sensor, which is, it can be quite difficult to see actually. Okay, and there we have our final boss, who is much bigger than the other characters. These characters, you might have to customize these ones. I've set the distance left and distance right to 10 so that it doesn't travel through the wall. Also, these characters, I've set them up at different distances. So feel free to customize your level as you need it. Now, let's just check the behaviors. We have a GUI, time start 6 minutes, and total beans 25 for this level. And if we go to the physics, it's obviously 55 gravity again. Now we can open level 5 and we can actually link level 5 to level 6. So go to the door and just change the scene from level 5 to level 6. We're going to work on the code on level 6 to get these blocks to start moving up and down, and it's going to be activated when this push block is pushed over this trigger sensor. Until then they'll actually be still. So let's go to the dashboard, go to active behaviors, and you should see a back and forth vertically. We want to click on this, right click, we want to duplicate. So we want to rename this one back and forth vertically. We'll call it trigger. We don't want to change the original, we just want to change this one. So we have a when created, a when updated. Now this actor any, we don't need it because we're not going to use it, and the drawing, we don't need that. Just these two. So what we're going to do first is in the when created, we're actually going to create a new attribute. Okay, these are the ones that are already being used, by the way. It's going to be of a type Boolean. I'm going to name it moving. Let's just drag this in for now. Go to the flow section and drag in an if, conditional if statement. Then an anything equals anything comparison, put moving in the left, and we're going to set this to true. So if moving is true, we now want to drag this one out. So set y speed. We can place this in there now, so it will only set the y speed if moving is true, otherwise it will actually be still. And this is when the level starts. Now on the updating, we need to drag this out for now. We're going to put these back later, but we need to create a lot more code here. So we're going to go to game attributes. We're going to create a new game attribute. It's going to be a Boolean, false, and we will call this one trigger. The game attribute because it needs to be called by another object, another script. So we're going to go to setters. Perhaps we can drag it in from the getters actually. Put in an if statement, a conditional if statement. Anything equals anything. Trigger in the left. And we're going to say Boolean comparison and false to begin with. So if trigger is equal to false, we're going to drag this one out, we're going to right click, we're going to duplicate it, put that back. And we're now going to put this one into this side. Okay, so we're going to set y speed too. Now we don't need that bit, we're simply going to set it to 0. So in other words, it won't be going up and down, it will just be static. Go back to attributes, create an attribute, and it's going to be a Boolean again. I'm going to call this one first move. So it's going to detect if this is the first time it started moving. We're going to go to setters and we're going to set first move to true. Okay, so as soon as we have triggered that, it's going to set the first move to true. It knows that this is the first time it's doing this. We're going to duplicate this one, put it underneath, and we're going to set trigger this time to true. Okay, we're going to drag all of this out. Now the set first move to true, we don't need that at the moment. We need to go to flow and we need to drag in another conditional if statement. Under attributes, we're going to set moving to, up here, we're going to set it to true. So it knows it started to move. We're going to put the conditional if statement under there. And we need an anything equals anything comparison. Go back to our attributes and we're going to say first move is equal to true. So if first move is equal to true, which it is, then we can use this. So drag it out, right click, let's copy, put this back, go into the updated, and we're going to right click and paste and put this in here. Okay, so we're going to say set y speed to initial direction times speed for self. So in other words, it knows it's got to go whatever initial direction and whatever speed you've set it as a first move. Now we don't want it to continuously do that under the updating, which is why it only happens if first move is equal to true. Okay, so now we don't need this anymore, so we can get rid of that. We're going to go to our flow and another conditional if statement. I'm going to put it just under here. And then we're going to drag this one out. Okay, so we're going to right click, we're going to duplicate this one because we need to use this. Put it back there, and we're going to put this inside of this if statement. So if the y center of self is less than start, okay, this is going to tell us that we can now set first move to false. We're going to switch it back off again so that the first move does not overwrite the rest of the code. It only happens when the trigger is triggered and it starts to move to begin with. Now we tell it what to do otherwise. And that's where this comes in. So let's go to flow, let's drag in a conditional if statement right at the bottom here. Need an anything equals anything comparison. Back to our attributes, and we simply say if moving is true. And we're going to put all of this back in here. So this is the code that would normally get things going up and down. Okay, so this should now work. Let's attach this to the actor type, and we actually want to attach this to the trigger block. So let's set this up. The speed will be about 10. The initial direction is up, distance up about 100, distance down 100. We don't want to change direction on collision. Now, we don't want to be able to change either of those. Go back to attributes tab and let's check these so that they're both hidden. Oh, sorry, the moving shouldn't be hidden, just the first move. We're now going to set up the trigger block so that they're going to start moving when the sensor is activated. So when the push block is pushed onto the sensor, they should start moving. Let's move our character a little bit closer. Testing purposes. So when the character is over the sensor, these will start to move. And when he's not on the sensor, they won't do anything. I'll put the character up there for now. So the first thing I need is to go to dashboard, actor behaviors, and let's create a new behavior. Call this trigger code. Now we need an event. It's going to be a basics and when creating. Go to game attributes. Now we can see the trigger. We're going to go to setters. I'm going to set trigger to false to begin with. So we're making sure that the trigger is not being set unless a character is on it. Let's go to attributes, create a new attribute, and we want a boolean. We will call this one trigger block. Go to the attributes tab. Trigger block is a boolean that is set to false to begin with, so we know what we're working with. Let's go to setters and set trigger block to false. We want to just double check that that is the case when it first starts. Go to collisions, and it's going to be actor of type. So when self, which is the, oh, just a second, it's the wrong one. Let's go to collision actors, and of course it enters or leaves a region actor of type. So actor type, let's choose the actor type, and that is obviously going to be player. It's enters. Now the region we need to set up as an attribute. So let's choose the type, let's call it trigger region, and let's change the type to region. Great, there it is, and now we can access this from choose attribute. Trigger region, there we go, and we can set that up. So when the player enters the trigger region, what we want to do is go to flow, we're going to drag in a conditional if statement and anything equals anything comparison. Go to attributes, if trigger block goes on the left, if trigger block is equal to false. This, draw, and we're going to switch animation. This is for the sensor, so, or the trigger as we've called it. Let's double click on the trigger and we're going from sensor to still. Okay, so we need to name that exactly the same. So type still in there. For the game attributes, and we need to set trigger to true, because now it's going to detect that we've set the trigger, and that's going to activate the code that we just did previously. Duplicate this one, let's rename it, and we'll call it exits region. Need to change a couple of things, so exits, trigger region. On the trigger we need to set this back to sensor. Okay, so rename this as sensor. And we simply need to set trigger back to false. That will cause the blocks to stop. So let's duplicate this one, and we want to call this one enters region block. So this is if you're actually pushing a block over it. So now we need to change this actor. We're going to create an attribute, in fact, of actor type. I'm going to create an actor type attribute, and we're going to call this one block. Okay, and this is for the push block, so we can customize that. So let's choose attribute. So if when a block enters the trigger region, we're going to change trigger block, set trigger block to true. Okay, it knows that it's a trigger block. Now we can change this one. We can drag out the false, and we can say equals to true, because it is. The rest of it is just the same. Let's duplicate this one. Just change the name. It's going to be exits region block. And all we have to do is just change a few things around. So it's when a block exits trigger region, set trigger block to false. And then switch animation back to sensor. And we need to set trigger to false. Okay, so it's a light switch method. We're switching things on and off. So this is going to detect when the player enters it or when the block enters the trigger sensor. Now let's attach this to the trigger. Okay, and from here we can set this up. So we want to choose the actor type. It's going to be a push block. Great, and the region we need to set inside of the level itself. So let's do that. Let's draw a region around this section. Right, so once the push block is inside of that region, it will activate these blocks. So let's go to Inspector, Customize. Okay, for some reason that's not. So let's reopen level 6. Click back on the sensor, customize, still nothing. Okay, so perhaps what I can do is delete this. Delete it, and then we can put a new one back in again. Great, we'll put that there, and now we can click on this one, and we should be able to customize this, which we can. So now we can choose the region. This region 2. So now that's going to detect when the player is inside of it or when a push block is in there. Let's test the scene. First of all, I'm going to move my character over it. And you see they instantly start moving. And then when I jump up, they stop. Brilliant. Okay. Oh, okay. And now I'm going to push this block onto it. So you just keep walking right. And now that block stays in position and keeps those blocks moving up and down. So it's very much a puzzle. All right. I'm going to move across these blocks. I want to test it to make sure that I can do it. Make that platform, yep. Now, the tricky part, can I make that block? Oh, okay, an issue, I got stuck in there. So we need to fix that. So let's customize this last block, and we're going to change its distance up and down to about 40 up and down. Test the scene again. And you might have to do this a few times just to make sure that you get the block working properly. Push this into place and then navigate over the moving blocks. And you can, if you like, get them all moving at different speeds if you want to make it even more challenging. Great, and I can fall off here. Now I'm no longer hitting my head on that, which is great, but I can't make it to the other side. So I'm going to leave that up to you to do that, to fix it so that you can actually get onto that platform. We are still working on level 6, and I'm just going to show you what I did with these trigger blocks. So you know this last one, click on it, inspector, and you can see that I've changed the speed to 7, distance up and down to about 50. I've moved it slightly over to the right there, so now I can definitely move across and reach that platform. Now if I move my character over to the end, we're at this position with the boss now. We want to get the boss to start moving. He's going to patrol left and right, so go to the dashboard, active behaviors, and we're going to create a new behavior. Let's call it boss move. I'm going to add a new event. It's going to be a basics and when updating. We're going to go to our attributes and create a new attribute. It's going to be a boolean. We're just simply going to call this one left. Drag that in for now. Let's go to flow and the conditional if statement. Let's drag in an equals comparison. Let's put left in the left. And we want to check if it's true on the right. So if left equals true, we want to go to actors, draw, and we want to switch our animation. Now, instead of typing in an animation, we're actually going to set this to an attribute so that we can drag in the animation later. So let's create a new attribute. Let's change it to animation. Let's call this boss left. Now drag that into place. Switch animation to boss left for self. Let's go back to actors and to motion. We want to drag in set X speed. So this will move the character in a continuous speed, and if it's left, it's always going to be a minus number. Right is going to be a positive number. So let's make this -5. So when updating every frame, it's going to move the boss -5 pixels to the left. Create another attribute, and we're going to change it to a number. It's going to be called patrol time. Drag that in for now. Let's go to flow and time. Let's drag in a do after 0 seconds and put patrol time in the top, so we can actually change this as a variable number. So after patrol time is completed, we want to set left to false. So that top part is only going to run as long as left is equal to true. Take a look at left. We actually want that to be hidden in the inspector. Flow, conditions, and we're going to drag in an otherwise. So otherwise, if left is not equal to true, we want to do this. Drag all that out, duplicate it, and we're going to move this into this otherwise. So we want to change this from boss left to boss right. So let's create a new attribute. It's going to be a new animation. Simply want to call it boss right. And drag that into place. Now the X speed, because it's going the other way, it's going to be a positive number, so it's going to be 5. Do after patrol time seconds, we're going to set left back to true. Okay, simple light switch method. Attach this to the actor, we're going to attach it to the boss. You can already see that this is set up, so let's just remove this behavior for now. So for some reason it's remembering something done before. And let's attach this, and we can see there, this is the way you should see it. Choose the animation, boss patrol left goes in the first one, which is the one on the far, boss patrol right, boss patrol left. And left is the default. Patrol time we will set to about 2 seconds. You can change this as you need it. Test the scene to see the boss patrolling. Great. So now the boss is patrolling left and right and playing the right animations. Or the correct animations, I should say. Now we're going to get the boss to start firing at the character. So he's going to start firing fireballs at the player. And it's going to be wherever the player is. So let's go back to dashboard, actor types, and let's just double click to open boss. So as we can see, we're only currently using boss patrol left and right. But we also want to use these animations, boss fire left and boss fire right. Let's go to behaviors, the boss move. Let's edit this behavior. Add a new event. It's going to be a time and every n seconds. Now we're going to create an attribute on here so that we can configure this in the behaviors. It's going to be a type number, and we will call it fire time. In other words, how often should the boss fire at the player? Let's drag that in there. Create another attribute. It's going to be a boolean. We will call this one firing. Okay, so that we can detect if we're firing or not. You don't want the character to be doing multiple things at the same time. Let's drag in a conditional if statement and anything not equal to anything. So we're going to go to our attributes, and firing should not be equal to true. In other words, it's a way of saying false, but the computer sometimes likes it to be set out like that. Set firing to true. So if it's not currently set to true, then set it to true. Okay, we're going to go to our flow, conditional if statement underneath set firing to true. Anything equals anything. We're going to go to our attributes, and we're going to say if left is equal to true. So in other words, if the computer is currently already, if the character is already moving left, then we want it to be facing left. Put an otherwise underneath that one. Create another attribute. It's going to be an animation, and we're going to call this one fire left. And while we're here, we might as well create the other one. Animation fire right. Now we can go to our, well, let's drag those in to begin with. We can go to our actors section, draw and switch animation. We need 2 of those. Fire left goes into the top one and fire right into the bottom one. Now it knows which animation to play depending on whether the character is going left or right. Dragging a do after 0 seconds underneath both of those, and let's just hard code this one. 1.2 seconds. Go to our attributes, we're going to go to our setters, and we're going to set firing back to false. So the character has enough time to play the animation and then it sets it back to false, so he starts moving again. Now all of this, drag it out temporarily. We're going to go back to our conditions, put in a conditional if statement, anything equals anything, and we're going to say if firing is equal to false. Firing equal to false. And if that's the case, then it can run all of these commands. So that's the patrol. When the character is firing, you should play the firing animation. So let's test the scene. There goes the character, but he's currently not doing anything. Why is the reason? See if you can figure out the reason why he's not doing anything. You can pause the video if you like. The reason why, we've set up the boss animations there, but if we double click and open again, you will now see that the behavior is updated. We've got 2 animations missing, so let's just set these. Boss fire left, boss fire right. Great, now that they're set up, and we need a fire time greater than 0. So should we say around 3 seconds? Every 3 seconds you should fire. So now on level 6, when we test the scene, we should now see the animation start changing. And there are often times when you're designing a game that you kind of skip forward as you're doing things and you forget to set things up. Great. So now he's playing the firing animation as he's continuing to move left and right. So we've not got 2 animations competing to be overriding each other. We're continuing to work on level 6. Our character already is changing, the boss is changing the animations. Now he's going to start firing fireballs in the direction wherever the player is. So if he's over here, it will fire over there. And if he's up top left, it will fire in the top left position. Let's go to dashboard, go to active behaviors and create a new behavior. We will call this one fireball, or if I can spell it, fireball move. We're going to add a new event. Basics and when creating. Go to attributes. I'm going to create a new attribute and it's going to be a number. We will call this one target X. And then we're going to create another one, number again, and this one's going to be called target Y. This is going to be our player's current position. So it knows where to fire the fireball toward. Now we need to set these equal to the player's position. So to do that, we're going to go to active behaviors and we're just going to open this player damage. We're going to go to the updating section and we're going to set the player's position here. Let's drag in a conditional if statement. And let's go to game attributes. And we're going to create a new game attribute. Okay, it's going to be a boolean. It's set to false to begin with. We're going to call it boss active. Click OK so that we know if the boss is actually active in the scene or not. I'm going to drag that in, back to flow. It's going to be anything equals anything. Boss active in the left, and it's going to be set to true in the right. Great, we're going to drag that underneath there. Our actors section, and we're going to say X of actor and Y of actor. So in other words, that's the X and Y of self. Create new attributes. It's going to be a number. We're going to say player X. Now click OK, and then we're going to set a player Y. It's also a number. Go to setters, and we can now see player X and player Y. Let's set player X and player Y to the X of self and Y of self. So X of self into the player X and Y of self into player Y. This will then record the player's position on an updating. So wherever your player goes, that number is being recorded. Now on the fireball move, it's only going to register this when it's first created. It's almost like taking a snapshot of it. So dragging a set target X and set target Y. Go to game attributes, and we're going to drag in player X and player Y. Now as the fireball is created, it's only going to remember where you were when it was first created, but it takes a couple of seconds for it to move, so it's not going to target you, it's simply going to fly in your direction. Click add event. Basics and when updating. Actually, go to actors and tweening. You can drag in the slide actor from here actually. So let's drag slide self 2, and then we go to our attributes and getters, and it's going to be target X in the X and target Y in the Y. We want to do this over how many seconds? So let's say 2. Over 2 seconds, it's going to slide to wherever you currently were when this fireball was created. Now go to add an event. It's going to be after n seconds. Double click on the boss fireball, and we want to change it to from the fireball animation, which is currently 800 milliseconds, to the explode. I'm going to say roughly do after 2 seconds. So once it reaches its destination, it's going to kill itself. Now we're going to attach that to the boss fireball. Target X and target Y are simply 0, but we don't actually want to see those, so we want to make those hidden. So we don't want to be overwriting any values, not that it would affect it. But actor behaviors and to boss move. And under the every n seconds, do every fire time seconds, we're going to go back to time, and we're going to say do after 0 seconds. This is going to go under the otherwise. We're going to say roughly 0.3 seconds, and we're going to spawn in fireball. So under scenes, we're going to create actor type. I'm going to choose the actor type. It's going to be a boss fireball. The X and Y is going to be X and Y of self. Now back to level 6, and let's see what this looks like. Let's click test scene. Okay, so it's not quite working right. It's going all the way over to the left for some reason. So let's try and figure out why it is doing that. So the boss moment, we don't know if the boss is active. We've not told it that the boss is active. And if we go to our actor behaviors and open boss move again, we need to go to basics and when created. And we're just simply going to say that the boss is active to begin with. Okay, we're going to change this later, but for to ensure that the fireballs work, we're simply going to drag in a set boss active and make it true. Okay, in this way, the fireballs can now target the player. We're going to change this later so that when you enter the boss's region, it becomes active. And there we go, the fireballs are heading to wherever the player is. Okay, and there's a 2-second delay on wherever we were. You can obviously change that if you want to make it more challenging, if you like. The boss currently is firing fireballs at the player. Now, using the boss fireball, we want to get it so that it changes from the fireball to the explode when it actually reaches the character, the destination. You will need to edit the fireball move script. So the code will actually be under here somewhere after n seconds. I'll do after 2 seconds. And that same 2 is there as well. You may need to change that so you've got time to actually play your animation. You're simply going to change it so that the fireball does explode. And then under the active behaviors, you've got your player damage code. Can you set it up so that the fireball actually takes damage off the player? So as you can see, the fireball is now exploding when it reaches its destination. And if it hits the player, it damages the player. And it will kill the player and send him back to the main menu. So let's go to dashboard, back to active behaviors. First of all, let's open fireball move. Okay, we can see that the time has changed here, so it's over 1.6 seconds to reach its destination. Now I've created another after n seconds, so after 1.6 seconds, switch animation to explode, which is the other animation on the boss fireball. So it changes from regular fireball to explode, and then after 2 seconds, it destroys itself, it kills the actor. Then if we open the player damage, we can see fireball damage, which is very much a clone of the first one. So when self hits a boss fireball, it triggers the event. Now to get the boss to kill the player. So when the player gets close to the boss and he hits him on the side, it should damage the player. Go back to dashboard and open player damage. And we can right click and duplicate water damage, and let's double click and rename this. This one is going to be boss damage. So when self hits and choose the actor, and it's going to be the boss. Okay, if lose a life is equal to true, set lose a life to false, trigger events, damage player. Now obviously we know that we only want that to happen if we're hitting the character on the side. So drag in the conditional if statement, collisions, and if the top of actor 1 wasn't hit. Let's change that to actor 2 because that's the boss. And we want to change this to wasn't hit. So in other words, as long as we're hitting the character anywhere other than the top, then it should take damage off our character. Test this to make sure that it works. Okay, yeah, so that works. But notice that you can walk into the boss for a while before he actually damages you. Now we are going to create the health bar for the boss on level 6, so that when you're in the boss region and you're going to be attacking the boss, there should be a health bar so that you have to hit him on the head numerous times in order to kill him. So let's go to dashboard, and this time it's a scene behavior. I'm going to click on here. Let's call it boss health bar. It's a scene behavior because it's going to appear on the scene, on the screen itself. Let's click Add Event, Basics, and When Drawing. Something visually that's going to be drawn on the screen. Let's go to the drawing category. First of all, let's go to Styles. We want to set our current font. We want to choose it, and it's going to be the largest score font. We're going to go to our drawing, and we're going to draw text. And we're going to write in there boss. Okay, it's a colon and then a space after it. Now the X and Y, we need to find its specific space on the screen. Now if we go back to our level 6, which is already open, we can see that if we drag our cursor over here and take a look at the coordinates in the bottom right down there, it's off, isn't it? So we have to drag it all the way back to the left, switch on the screen bounds button so that we can see where it is. It's a bit difficult to see, but we want the boss to be appearing around, roughly around here, so about 460 or thereabouts. Type that in. So 460 in the X. In the Y, it should read 4. Now we go back to styles and we want to set a fill color, and this is for the health bar. It's going to start at, let's choose a color actually. It's going to be red basically. This is the underlying color. This is the bottom color when the boss has been damaged. We're going to go to the drawing and we're actually just going to draw a box or a rectangle. Drag this in here. And instead of draw, we're going to say fill. This is going to ensure that it's a solid rectangle. The X and Y are going to be 520, so it's not overwriting the boss text. And it's going to be 8. Okay, and the width is 100 and the height is going to be 10 pixels. Now we go back to styles and we're going to set another fill color for a rectangle above it. Okay, and this one's going to be yellow this time. Feel free to choose the colors if you like. We're going to draw in another rectangle and we're actually going to change that to fill. It'll be the exact same X and Y coordinates, 520 by 8. And the width and height, so the height is exactly the same, it's 10, but the width is going to be determined by a percentage. So we need to write a bit of code. We need to find out what percentage the boss health currently is. So let's go to attributes, create a new attribute, and it's going to be a number. We're going to call this max health. There's max health for the boss. On the attributes, it's a number. I'm going to change its default value to 100. Go to game attributes and we need to create a new one, and this is going to be a number. This is going to be boss health. Its initial value is going to be 100 as well. Click OK. If that doesn't show up, just click basics and when creating, and then it should show up, and then we can delete that. And there it is, boss health at the top. So drag that in for now. Go to attributes, we also need max health, and now we need numbers and text. So to work out a percentage, we need a division, and we also need a multiplication. If you remember how to work out a percentage, we're taking the large number, the small number, which is boss health, because that can at any point be smaller than max health, divided by the large number. And then we're going to multiply that by 100. Okay, let's drag that in there, and let's put that into the width. So if it's 100, it's 100 divided by 100, which will give you 1, and then times that by 100 takes you right back to 100. But if the boss health was, for example, 90, divided by 100 will make 9, times that by 100 and it takes you right back to 90. So you have 90%, and then 80%, 70%, 60%, etc. So let's attach this to the scene. We're going to attach it to level 6. And we can see we can set our max health in the behaviors tab if we want to. It is going to appear there on the end. And there it is. So we can see boss, and we have the yellow bar at the moment. Now it's not going to do anything at the moment because we haven't sorted out the code, but we can change the value so that we can see it working. We can see if it works so far. So click on settings and attributes, and let's go to our boss health and change this temporarily to 80. Now it should be at 80%. So let's test the scene again. Great, so now we can see the yellow bar only fills 80% of the full boss health bar. Now we're going to get our player to be able to damage the boss so that we can see the health bar working. It should automatically go down. So click on settings and attributes, and let's go back to our boss health, which is at the top, and set this back to 100. Now go to dashboard, actor behaviors, in fact scene behaviors, and boss health bar. Let's click add an event, basics and when creating. Go to game attributes, setters, and we're going to set boss health to max health. Okay, so whatever max health is, that's what boss health is going to be. It's going to allow us to customize it in the actual scene itself. So by default, that boss bar should be full. Go back to actor behaviors and boss move. Let's open that. Add an event. It's going to be a collision with an actor of type. So it's going to be self because this is the boss. We're going to choose the actor and it's going to be the player. Now we're dragging a conditional if statement and a collision. So we want to say if the top of actor 1 was hit. And this time the actor 1 is the boss, so we can leave it like that. As long as the head of the boss was hit, we want it to do something. Go back to actor behaviors and player damage. Let's open this, and we can actually use this code. So let's drag this out. We're going to right click and we're going to copy this. Go back to boss move and we're going to just paste this in here. Great. So whenever you paste something in like that and you've got your local attributes lose a life, you'll notice that they appear in there. It will actually copy them over for you, which is great. Unfortunately, it doesn't copy this trigger event over, so we do have to still create this damage, and we'll change this from damage player to damage boss. So we do need to now create that. So add an event, advanced custom event. It has to be spelled exactly the same, damage boss. We can even rename it there. Now you don't have to rename these events for them to work. Just makes it more organized. So when damage boss happens, we can actually copy this from damage player. So we can drag all of this out, right click and copy. And paste this into this code here. So we can set health to health -1. In fact, we might actually make that around health -10 perhaps. Go to our setters and it needs to be set boss health to boss health. We don't want to affect the player. So boss health in the left. Let's minus around 10 off that. So just 1, because otherwise it would take you forever to kill the boss. Great, there we go. We can put that back onto the top and we can change this from player hurt to boss hurt. Put that back into place. Great, so that should work. Now we need a new custom event and it's going to be called boss hurt. Let's just rename this custom event on the left. As I say, you don't have to rename these, but it just keeps it nice and organized. Okay, so once again, let's go over to the player damage, and whatever's in player hurt, we can duplicate, we can copy this. And we can paste it into the boss move. I'm going to do the exact same that it does with our player. It's just easier than trying to recreate the code again. As long as we're hitting the boss on the head, it's taking damage off the boss. And let's just test this to make sure that it works. Okay, there we go, and I took some life off him, but then he killed me. We want to work on level 6 now. We want to get it so that the boss is only activated if the player moves into this particular scene where the boss is. So originally the player is all the way over here to the left. Now we don't want the boss firing fireballs at the player when he's all the way over here. But if we test the scene at the moment, that's exactly what we're going to see. Which obviously is unfair because we can't reach the boss for quite some time. But what we're going to see is that we've got the boss health bar up there and the boss fireballs are hitting our player. And obviously killing him. That's why we want to activate the boss in this final scene here, and we can use this weak wall to help us to do that. So we're going to draw a region just to the right of the wall region there, and that's going to be our activation trigger. It's going to activate the boss and the health bar. Let's go to events on this particular scene on level 6, and let's click add an event. It's going to be an actors, enters or leaves a scene or region actor of type. So let's choose actor type, and it's going to be our player. Enters, and it is a region on this scene, so just choose the region. There it is. And we're going to go to our game attributes. We're going to go to setters, and we're going to set boss active to true. That's all we need to do really. We do need to set boss active to false on when created actually. Now what we can do here, we can actually if we go to behaviors and to state, we can actually enable or disable behaviors for this scene. Okay, so we simply want to enable the behavior, and we can see what it's called, boss health bar for level 6. So we need to, well, we might need to type it in. Let's see if we can find it. Actually, I'm not sure. There's a lot there. Oh, there it is on the bottom there. Great. So we can enable boss health bar for this scene. Now if we do that, under the created, we have to remember to disable it. So let's drag that in under there, and we need to disable boss health bar for this scene. We don't want it showing up to begin with, only when we enter the boss area. While we're here, we can go to game attributes and we can set boss active to false, so that the boss shouldn't be firing fireballs at us. Now if we go to scene, let's test this again and see what happens. Okay, so there's no boss health bar, but our character is still getting hit by these fireballs. if you remember in the scene before, in the last lesson, we actually went into our boss and we set boss active to be true under the boss move, under the creator. That's what's overriding everything else. So let's switch this. In fact, we can delete this. Let's delete it. So now the boss active is set entirely on level 6. Nowhere else. This is something that can easily trip you up when you're doing multiple activations on multiple scripts. So now there's no boss health bar and the fireball is appearing. Okay, so it's appearing on the top left. So we need to fix that, but it's not attacking our player. Let's go back into boss move. What we can see here, every n seconds, it's firing fireballs, but it's not being told when, when it shouldn't be firing fireballs. So dragging a conditional if statement to anything equals anything, go to the game attributes, and we want to say if boss active is equal to true, only then should it be firing fireballs. So all of this should go inside of that conditional if statement, and that will stop it from firing fireballs when it's not active. Let's go back to level 6, test this scene to make sure that it works. Great, and there's no more fireballs appearing anywhere, whether it's on our player or in the top left. Now what we want to do is test our level 6 to make sure that there are no errors or issues. So we're just going to move our player over toward where the boss is. So because we've got an activation working on here, we want to make sure that all of this works. Temporarily, I'm going to go to the objects and put in a stick of dynamite so that I don't have to travel back and forward all the time. And our player's going to fall on there, be able to destroy the wall, and then activate the boss. Let's go to our settings, double click on, let's click on attributes and go to health. I'm going to temporarily bump this up a bit. I'm going to put it up to 200 for debugging purposes so that my character doesn't die straight away. And let's test the scene now. Okay, so I've got dynamite. I'm going to press T, close that up, and as I walk forward, I activate the boss. Great. And now he starts firing fireballs at me. Okay, it's a good thing that I've got over 200 health. Okay, and they're working. Now what I want to try and do is see if I can kill the boss. So I have to jump on his head multiple times. I may have set this up so that it's a little too difficult. I might want him to be firing these fireballs at a slower pace perhaps. Could even sort it out so that the fireballs have a collider that's a sensor, so that not interfering with how I jump, etc. As you can see, the boss health bar is going down slowly, and I can actually walk on his head, but if I do so, he will fire a fireball at me. Okay, so he's now at minus health, so the yellow bar is now going into the minus. It will actually get longer on the left now. As you can see, it's overwriting the boss there. Now, we haven't yet created the win condition when the boss's health is at 0, but that's what we'll do. So we know that the boss health bar works, we know that we can jump on his head and that damages him. And you can see that he's also taking damage off me as well. Great, so all of that appears to be working. Just going to get rid of that and put my character back to the start position of this level. Now what we want to do, click on settings, on attributes, and go back to player health. And let's change it from 200 back to 3. Click OK. And we want to set it so that when your character, when the boss is on 0 health, for it to go to a win screen. So let's create a new win level. Okay, width and height are fine. We're going to make the background black. And click create for now. So this is all we need for now. This is fine. We want it that when the boss's health reaches 0, it goes to the win screen. So we want to see how the scene goes to the win screen when the boss dies. So his max health is 100 and total jelly beans for this level is 25. Okay, so I've added that. Let's click edit behavior and we can see our drawing's fine. Under the updating, we have simply written this, or you should have. If boss health is less than or equal to 0 and jelly bean equals total jelly beans, switch to win and fade out for 0.5 seconds. In other words, you have to collect all the jelly beans and kill the boss as well. So if his health falls below 0 or is equal to 0, it goes to the win screen. The creator hasn't changed. And that's all that's required. Okay, so on level 6, you may very well actually kill the boss, but without collecting all of the jelly beans. So there might be a few jelly beans left. But because of the code that we've just written, it won't actually allow you to kill the boss unless you've already collected all the jelly beans first. So we want to change the code slightly so that you can do that. Let's go to the boss health bar. Edit this behavior, and under the updating we can see that there's only one condition for killing the boss, and it simply switches to the next scene. So we want to duplicate this one, put it underneath, and where it says jelly bean is equal to total jelly beans, well, we're going to get rid of that to begin with. Jelly bean equals total to jelly beans. We're going to say anything not equal to anything. So if jelly bean is not equal to jelly beans, but the boss health bar is less than or equal to 0, we're going to go to actors, properties, and we're going to kill. And we can't choose anything off there. We can't choose an attribute at the moment, but we can set an attribute of an actor. So let's create a new attribute, actor. We will call this boss. Now we should be able to set that. So boss. Great. So it's then going to kill the boss. All right. We're going to go to behaviors and state. We're going to disable this behavior that's currently on the scene. So it disables the boss, it disables the boss health bar, etc. And now on level 6, the max health we'll set it to 10 for testing purposes to see if this works. And we'll move our character closer to the boss so that we can test this. Very important as you're making changes to your code to continuously check if it works. I'm going to place my player there so that when he falls it will activate the boss. Great, so the boss is now active. He's firing fireballs at me. I only have to hit him once to kill him. There we go. I killed him, but I died as well. So what might be best is for me to go into settings, attributes, and just change health to 200 again for testing purposes. And let's test the scene again. Doesn't matter if I get hit anymore. There we go, and okay, so the boss hasn't died. Can you figure out why the boss hasn't died? And the reason why, if we go into behaviors, I might have to restart level 6 actually to see this. Under behaviors we can see that we've got a boss actor that has not been set. I often do that. I often forget to configure the attributes. So let's test it again. Now when I hit the boss, he dies. Okay, and the health bar has disappeared, and now it leaves me free to go and collect all of the jelly beans. We are now going to work on the win condition when the boss is actually killed. So go to the GUI behavior attached to the scene and edit this behavior. We want it to display a message. Collect all the jelly beans, which is message ID number 2, after you've killed the boss but haven't yet collected all the jelly beans. So drag in a conditional if statement. And then we need an AND Boolean operator. We need an anything not equals anything. Drag that one out. We actually need a less than or equal to comparison. So go to game attributes and we want boss health to be less than or equal to 0. And this is going to go into the left. And then in this one, it's going to be jelly beans. The jelly bean is not equal to, and its local attribute, and it's total beans. Okay, so we haven't yet picked up all the jelly beans. So in this case, we're going to go to our setters and we're going to set message ID to number 2. Okay, we just collect all the jelly beans. And that's then going to give the instruction that you now need to collect all the jelly beans in order to complete this level. We'll go back to level 6 and we're going to go to events on this particular level. We're going to add a new event. It's basics and when updating. Now drag in a conditional if statement and Boolean operator. I'm going to say less than or equal to, and then anything equals anything. So now boss health will be less than or equal to 0 because we have killed the boss. And now jelly bean is going to be equal to total beans. But under the attributes we don't have it, so let's create that attribute. So total beans is the name and it's a type number. Great, let's drag that in. Now because we're setting this on the level 6 scene itself, first of all let's switch to scene. We're going to choose the scene and it's obviously going to be the win scene. Fade out and it's going to be 0.5 and 0.5 to fade back in again. Now for the total beans, because we're setting it on level 6, we do need to actually configure it in the attributes tab. Okay, the default value should be 25. There's nowhere else where we can set that from. Okay, so this is enough in order to be able to complete this level. Now let's edit this behavior, the boss health bar. Under the updating, we're going to put this in here, and we actually don't need this anymore because now we've set this on level 6. Just there, so that kind of, there's no point in duplicating that. So this is enough here. So let's test the scene to make sure that this works. Great, and now the message comes up, collect all the jelly beans, which I'm not going to do at the moment. However, what I can do, I can actually go to this value and I can change this number in order to test this. It's a debugging. So I'm going to change this to number 2. So I only have to collect 2 jelly beans in order to complete this level. Okay, so I've got 1 jelly bean, 2 jelly beans. I've killed the boss and it's now showing up with the win screen, which we've not yet created. Great, so we know that it works, so now we can set this back to 25. Under the boss health bar, make sure that the max health is 100. And that's all correct. The message manager is correct. Click on settings, go to attributes, and let's just make sure that our health is back to 3 and not 200. Then the dustbin, as we no longer need it. And let's put our player back to the beginning of the scene. And that is level 6 completed. What I want you to do is I want you to have a go at creating this yourself, which is the win scene. Okay, so it's got some text which you're going to have to create using code. It's got all of these jelly beans and it's got these other characters. They're your friends that are jumping up and down. It's also got a back to main menu button which you can click. You can also move your own character, and it's almost like a mini game in that you can stack these guys up on top of each other. And the objective is to collect all of the jelly beans on this scene. There's no actual reward on this particular scene, but you can create a reward if you like. This is the layout. Once again, everything is on layers in order to make it more organized. And well, we'll come back to that in a second. What you can see here is that there are a couple of regions. You will need this region 0 in order to make these characters jump. There is also a region 1 which you can click on to go back to the main menu. We'll need to create the text dynamically in the events. Under the actor types, you will see that there's a jelly bean friend. This is just a case of duplicating the jelly bean. You will need to modify this slightly so that the player friend can actually pick them up. The player friend is a duplicate of the player. Need to be modified in order to make him jump. You will lay everything out on the win screen, and on the actor behaviors, you will notice that the jump and run movement will need to be duplicated. Called jump and run movement friend. Okay, that will also need to be modified in order to make the friends jump. Okay, so it needs to be attached to the player friend. There will also be a player friend behavior. Okay, this is going to activate the jump. So using all of the code that you've learned during the series, see if you can make this scene work. Well, first of all, let's go back to dashboard and to actor types. So first of all, it was a case of duplicating the jelly bean and renaming it as jelly bean friend. So nothing's changed there. There's no behaviors. And under the events, this is exactly the same as is this. This is the same, but we have an actor type copy. And this simply says when self hits a player friend, kill self. Okay, but it's not counting the jelly beans on that one. So the player friend, the duplicate of the friend of the player, has some differences. So the behaviors, cannot exit screen, is still there, and it has 2 new behaviors on here, and all the others have been taken off. So jump and run movement friend has use controls unselected. Now if they're unselected, the control attributes are ignored, but the movement can be controlled by triggering custom events, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And we can actually make it jump simply by calling jump. So left control, right control, and jump control are not set. These are exactly the same, and jump animation when falling is checked. I'll come back to that in a second. Let's go to player friend, which is the code that we've created. Edit this behavior to take a look at it, and it's just simply this. So when player enters the region, okay, which is actor of type enters or leaves region. Okay, that's the player friend enters, and it's a jump region, which is an attribute. Okay, so that we can set it in the scene. You can see it's of type region. Okay, when that happens, it's going to trigger this event called jump in the behavior jump and run movement friend. Let's take a look at it. Is this one? Okay, so if I now edit this behavior, you can see we're going to ignore the top parts. The last custom event is called jump. So when jump happens, the character jumps. It's exactly the same as pressing the up key on the keyboard. We're just simply doing that by code. Okay, so on the actual windscreen now, no behaviors, the physics 55 for gravity, and the events. So we have a drawing event. First thing is that we've set the message font as the font for the message, which is a smaller font. Draw text, you win at those particular coordinates. And if you want text to appear on multiple lines, you just simply drag more draw text commands in. And you have to space them apart using the coordinates. Then the current font is set to score font for the back to main menu button. And then on region, this is when it is pressed on region 1, which is the button region. So when you click on the button region, it takes you back to the main menu. I'm just currently on level 5, and I've identified a bug relating to this dynamite. It doesn't happen every time. However, there are some times where it does actually throw up a null reference exception error. So I'm just going to test the scene and see if I can recreate this bug. Okay, so there's the error message. So it's saying cannot access a property or method of a null object reference. So this means that there's something missing. It's looking for something but cannot find it. And it's related to a climb ladder. Okay, so if you simply click continue, it will bring the error back up. And if you click dismiss all, it won't let you do anything really. It's going bizarre. So let's fix this. So what we can see here is that we have a region 0 around this. Now, it's in relation to all of these ladders. So if I click on, let's say, this ladder and go to the inspector, we can see that it's not customized. But if I click customize, you can see that by default it's looking for a ladder region of region and then the player, choose actor. Because the player has not been set, this is causing a null reference exception. So there are numerous ways we could do this. We could go through each and every ladder piece and set the actor, which is going to take time, so I don't actually want to do that. Instead, what I can do is go to my regions, and I can take this region and I can make its size very small. I'll make it 12 by 6, let's say. And then I'm going to zoom in on this. Keep zooming in, okay. And then I'm going to move this somewhere where potentially I'm not going to hit it. I might hit it there actually. I'll put it somewhere up there, okay. In fact, I'm going to move it over there because there's less likelihood that I'm going to jump into that section. I don't want to have to touch region 0 though. Now I could delete region 0, but the issue there is that it renames the regions, or the next time that I create a region, it creates a new region 0. So I'm just going to put it there. Okay, so now I'm zoomed back out again. I'm going to now go and create a new region around here. Okay, and that's called region 6. So instead of it being region 0, region 6, and this should not interfere with any of the ladders. Now what I need to do is go to my scene behavior, my message manager, and where it's saying region 0, I can now choose region 6. So now when I test the scene, I shouldn't get any more errors. Great. No issues at all there. So if that is an error that you're finding in your game at any point, just check the region 0 because it is set by default on objects. So just create a region that is not region 0.